Welcome to today's Explainer. I'm really thrilled you're here. Look, if you manage commercial spaces, you already know that the decisions we make about materials aren't just about making things look pretty anymore. They are deeply, fundamentally strategic. Today, we're cutting through all that typical marketing fluff to look at the actual operational reality of sustainable wall graphics. Specifically, we're going to dig into the breakthrough of direct-to-wall technology and see exactly how it stacks up against those legacy systems we've all been using for decades. So, let's jump right into the data.
You know, there's this saying right now. Sustainability has moved from a marketing talking point to an operational requirement. And honestly, that shift is totally reshaping the industry. If you're a facilities director on a workplace team or an institutional administrator, green initiatives are no longer just nice to have. They are bottom-line mandates. You're being asked to reduce waste, shorten downtime, and somehow improve the occupant experience all at once. Oh, and you usually have to pull off this magic trick without expanding your budget, right? Well, wall graphics sits squarely at the intersection of all these intense priorities.
To navigate all this, we're going to break things down into a few key areas: the modern commercial space, legacy graphic drawbacks, the direct-to-wall solution, analyzing lifecycle ROI, real-world deployments, and finally, making the expert choice.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the modern commercial space. This is where the pressure on teams is really turning up.
When we want to evaluate true environmental integrity, we have to look way past the shiny green label. It's about setting rigorous criteria. We need to look at material chemistry, like are there heavy metals or toxic solvent-based adhesives involved? We have to quantify the total material mass, which basically means measuring every single square foot of plastic or paper you're dragging into a building. Then, we evaluate the installation inputs, the durability, and the speed of the install to avoid major disruptions. And finally, the big one, end-of-life removal. Can you just paint over it when you're done, or do you have to break out toxic chemicals to scrape it off the walls? These are the strict rules of the game, if we want to get this right.
Which brings us right to Section 2, legacy graphic drawbacks. We really have to understand why the traditional materials, stuff built for a totally different era, are just failing modern operational standards.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, vinyl. Standard vinyl wraps rely heavily on PVC chemistry. That's polyvinyl chloride, a chlorine-based plastic that's often mixed with plasticizers like phthalates. Because of their complicated composite layers and chemical contamination, post-consumer PVC graphics almost never make it into actual recycling streams. We're literally talking about thousands of tons of this material being shipped straight to landfills every single year. And worse, it takes centuries to break down alongside those heavy pressure-sensitive adhesives and release liners. The hidden environmental cost here is absolutely staggering.
If you compare the two legacy heavyweights, vinyl wraps and wallpaper, it's kind of like a match where neither side wins. Vinyl gives you those heavy adhesives and peeling corners the second it gets hit with high traffic. Then you're stuck with a labor-intensive chemical removal process that often rips up the drywall underneath, triggering that dreaded patch and paint cycle that literally keeps facilities managers up at night. On the other hand, you've got wallpaper. Even the PVC-free stuff relies on really messy pastes. It has vulnerable seams that love to peel, and it can retain moisture, which is a massive hygiene concern for places like hospitals. Getting rid of it requires the sloppy wet and scraping process. Simply put, neither of these is going to cut it for a high-traffic, occupied commercial space today.
So what on earth is the alternative? Well, that takes us to Section 3, the direct-to-wall solution. This is pretty much the technological savior of the industry.
The absolute beauty of this process is just how elegantly simple it is. Step 1 is minimal site prep, maybe a quick light sanding or a tiny bit of patching. Step 2, you print on site directly onto the substrate. We're talking drywall, concrete, brick, whatever. Step 3 is an immediate cure. Boom, done. And step 4, which is honestly revolutionary for sustainability, is that at the end of its life, you literally just paint over it. By completely cutting out roll media, backing paper, laminates, and adhesives, you are drastically reducing your material mass and avoiding the landfill altogether. It's a game changer.
But let's be real. This all has to make financial sense. Let's move over to Section 4, analyzing lifecycle ROI. A true expert always looks at the total cost of ownership, not just that initial sticker price.
When you actually map these solutions across cost, durability, and impact, the differences are totally stark. Looking at cost over time, direct-to-wall often slashes installation time by 30 to 60% compared to those clunky multi-panel systems. You're entirely preventing the unplanned spend of rework from bubbling vinyl or failing wallpaper seams. Under durability, it's completely seam-free. You don't have to deal with those frustrating edge failures. Environmentally, you've got minimal material mass instead of heavy plastics and landfill-bound adhesives. So, when you crunch the numbers, the lifecycle math heavily favors direct-to-wall printing.
Let's transition from the theoretical to the practical. In Section 5, Real-World Deployments, we're going to see how this technology is actively dominating the market right now.
5 hours. That number is absolutely crucial. Installations using direct-to-wall frequently take under 5 hours per area. This is a massive operational victory. Think about it. It means you can knock out overnight or phased upgrades without setting up annoying barricades, without closing down busy corridors, and most importantly, without losing out on revenue.
Let's look at how that speed applies to healthcare patient towers. Hospitals are jumping on this for wayfinding and safety reminders along those really long inpatient corridors. Because of that incredibly fast turnaround, they can just utilize night shift printing. The result? 0 patient moves, no disruptions to patient care. Plus, the UV curable inks provide really high cleanability, which is absolutely critical where harsh hospital-grade disinfectants are being used every single day. It completely bypasses all the hygiene risks of peeling vinyl seams.
And the brilliance of this is how well it scales. Take multi-location retail, for example. We're seeing 60-store seasonal rollouts happening seamlessly. By printing directly on site, you achieve 0 freight delays, no getting stuck waiting on a shipping container. You get absolute national consistency in a matter of days rather than weeks, and you drastically slash your shipping emissions. And the best part? At the end of the season, instead of ripping down piles of plastic and chucking it into a dumpster, the store teams just roll some fresh paint over the wall. It's that easy.
University campuses are also leaning into this heavily because of the immense substrate compatibility. Think about academic buildings. They constantly have painted CMU and concrete block walls. Legacy vinyl is a nightmare on those textures. But with direct-to-wall, universities are getting stunning, photoreal imagery printed directly onto these highly textured surfaces in just 2 nights. And again, entirely without adhesives. It's a ridiculously robust solution for those high-traffic student areas. All right, let's bring it all together in Section 6, making the expert choice. We've looked at the data, the chemistry, and the real-world impact.
So I've got to ask you, which solution actually fits the operational reality of your space? I highly encourage you to critically audit your own walls. Look closely at your drywall, your brick, your concrete. Evaluate your refresh cadences, like how often are you really changing these graphics out? And be totally honest with yourself about your disruption tolerances. Can you really afford to close down a main corridor for 3 days for a standard vinyl install and removal, or do you need a slick 5-hour turnaround? I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. True expertise in this space means realizing that environmental responsibility and superior operational performance, they go hand in hand now. You literally do not have to compromise on your budget, your timeline, or your visual quality to achieve a credible, future-proof sustainability posture. Direct-to-wall printing isn't just an eco-friendly alternative, it is fundamentally a superior operational tool. So the next time you're gearing up for a big rollout, I have to ask, will you stick to the legacy waste, or will you print directly into the future? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.